No! Ricky! God damn you, you bastard! Don't you fucking dare! The woman's cries echoed through the dank tunnel as she futilely reached towards the sealed blast door, pounding on it with bloodied fists. Thud, thud, thud. The sound of her desperation reverberated through the confined space, the rhythmic impacts a mocking echo of her fading heart. Beyond the thick metal, the faint sounds of gunfire and alien shouts could be heard. Ricky Crawford, once a proud soldier, and now the reluctant leader of New Terra's ragtag resistance, had sealed himself on the other side. Someone had to hold back the Tholians long enough for the intel to get out, long enough for humanity to learn the horrible truth. The Tholian Empire feared mankind, feared them enough to break every rule of engagement in a desperate attempt to neutralize the unknown element that made humans such deadly adversaries. Genetic experimentation, nerve stapling, forced mutations, nothing was beyond the gray-skinned aliens in their relentless quest for domination. But Ricky had a plan paid for in blood and sacrifice, a plan that would shake the foundations of Tholian control and rally humanity's indomitable spirit. The woman slumped against the blast door, tears of grief and rage streaking her soot-stained face. The sounds of battle faded, leaving only a terrible silence. Ricky was gone, but his legacy had just begun. The Tholians would soon learn the true depths of mankind's resolve, and the galaxy would tremble before the coming storm. In the grim aftermath of Ricky's sacrifice, the woman staggered through the labyrinthine tunnels, her heart heavy with grief and purpose. She emerged into the harsh light of New Terra's sun, squinting against its glare. Around her, the ragtag remnants of the resistance huddled in small groups, their faces etched with a mixture of sorrow and unyielding commitment. Governor Uko's retaliation was swift and brutal. Tholian shock troops descended upon the colony's cities like a plague, their gleaming armor a cruel mockery of order amidst the chaos they sowed. Homes were raided, families torn asunder as the aliens ruthlessly hunted down anyone suspected of rebel sympathies. The woman and her comrades barely escaped the dragnet, fleeing to the rugged wilderness as their safe houses burned. In the shadows of New Terra's frontier, an unlikely alliance took shape. Zara, an Arcturian smuggler with eyes like chips of ice and a ship that could outrun the stars, had no love for the Tholians. She saw in the rebels a chance to strike back at the empire that had taken everything from her. And so, with a smirk and a price, she agreed to be their lifeline, ferrying the weapons and supplies that would keep the dream of freedom alive. Even as the resistance fought on, cracks began to form in the Tholian edifice. Kython, a young officer caught between two worlds, found himself unable to stomach the atrocities committed in the Empire's name. The experiments, the brutality, the sheer inhumanity of it all, it gnawed at his soul until he could bear it no longer. And so, with trembling hands and a heart full of doubt, he reached out to the rebels, becoming their silent guardian in the heart of the enemy's lair. Emboldened by Zara's aid and Kython's intelligence, Ricky's team embarked on a campaign of daring raids, striking at Tholian outposts with the speed and ferocity of a hellcat. They became ghosts in the wilderness, legends whispered around campfires and in the dark corners of the colony's taverns. And as word of their exploits spread, something long dormant began to stir in the hearts of the oppressed across New Terra and beyond. But the Tholians would not relinquish their grip so easily. Governor Uko, his pride stung and his fury stoked to new heights, called upon the might of the Empire to crush the rebellion once and for all. A fleet unlike any seen before descended upon New Terra, led by the notorious Admiral Zorgax, a name that struck fear into the hearts of even the bravest rebels. Faced with annihilation, Ricky and his comrades hatched a desperate plan. They would strike at the very heart of Tholian power on New Terra, Governor Uko's fortress-like compound. It was a gamble, a roll of the dice with the fate of an entire world at stake. But if they could seize control of the compound's communications array, if they could rally the other rebel cells scattered across the planet, as the Tholian fleet began its bombardment and the ground trembled beneath the rebels' feet, they steeled themselves for the battle to come. In the heart of each man and woman beat the indomitable spirit of humanity, a spirit that had carried them across the stars and would now lead them to victory or to a glorious end. The woman checked her weapon, the weight of Ricky's sacrifice heavy on her shoulders. She looked to her comrades, seeing in their eyes the same fire that burned within her own. They were the resistance. They were humanity's last hope, and they would not go gently into the night. The ground shook as the first Tholian bombardment struck New Terra. Ricky's team moved swiftly through the shadows, their faces grim with tenacity. Kython's fingers danced across the access panel, disabling the compound's defenses with practiced ease. "We're in," he whispered, his hybrid features barely visible in the dim light. The rebels surged forward, breaching the perimeter. Alarms blared as they encountered the first wave of Uko's elite guard. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, scorching the pristine walls of the compound. "Split up," Ricky commanded, gesturing to his squad mates. "We need to find that command center." As they fought their way deeper into the labyrinthine corridors, the sounds of battle echoed from above. Zara's voice crackled over the comm, punctuated by the roar of her ship's engines. "Having fun down there?" she quipped. "Because I'm having a blast up here." The swift blade weaved through a hail of Tholian fire, its shields flickering but holding. Zara's diversionary attack had the desired effect, drawing away a significant portion of the enemy forces. Back in the compound, Ricky and his team found themselves pinned down outside the command center. Governor Uko's voice boomed from within, a mixture of rage and fear evident in his alien tones. "You think you can defeat the Empire?" he snarled. "You're nothing but vermin." Ricky signaled to his team, then burst through the doors. Uko stood waiting, encased in battle armor that gleamed wickedly in the harsh light. The Tholian governor towered over Ricky, his strength augmented by advanced Tholian technology. The two leaders clashed in a furious melee. Uko's armored fists crashed against Ricky's makeshift shield, driving him back. But the human's agility and quick thinking kept him in the fight. As they grappled, Uko's eyes widened with realization. You're not just fighting for this world, are you?" Ricky didn't answer, focusing instead on finding a weakness in the governor's defenses. He feinted left, then struck hard at a joint in the armor. Uko howled in pain and fury. In that moment of distraction, Ricky saw his opening. He lunged forward, driving his blade deep into a gap in the Tholian's armor. Uko staggered, his alien face contorting in shock and disbelief. But even as he fell, the governor's hand slammed down on a console. Alarms blared throughout the compound. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," an emotionless voice announced. 5 minutes to detonation." Ricky cursed, calling to his team. "Everyone out, now!" They raced through the corridors, fighting off the remaining Tholian forces. Kython broke away, heading for the communications array. "What are you doing?" Ricky shouted over the comms. "Finishing the mission," Kython replied, his voice strained as he battled his way to the array. Outside, the swift blade swooped low over the compound, its hull scarred from countless near misses. Zara's voice cut through the chaos. "I can give you one shot at extraction," she said. "Make it count." As the compound began to shake itself apart, Kython's message blazed across the galaxy. The truth of the Tholians' cruelty, the call for unity and rebellion, spread from world to world. Ricky and his team sprinted for the extraction point, Kython joining them at the last moment. They leapt aboard Zara's ship as the compound erupted in a massive fireball behind them. As they soared away from the devastation, a flicker of hope burned in their hearts. But the war was just getting started. Even now, Admiral Zorgax rallied his forces, preparing to unleash a terrible vengeance upon New Terra and its people. The swift blade streaked across the war-torn sky, carrying with it the future of humanity in this corner of the galaxy. Whatever came next, Ricky and his allies knew one thing for certain. The real fight was just beginning. The swift blade sliced through New Terra's atmosphere, its hull glowing from the heat of re-entry. Inside, Ricky and his team braced themselves as Zara executed a series of evasive maneuvers, narrowly avoiding the barrage of Tholian fire. "Hang on!" Zara shouted, her fingers dancing across the controls. "This is going to be a rough landing!" The ship touched down hard, skidding across the scorched earth of what had once been a thriving metropolis. As the hatch opened, the acrid smell of smoke and burning fuel assaulted their senses. Ricky emerged first, his eyes scanning the desolate landscape. Where bustling streets had once stood, only rubble and ash remained. In the distance, the unmistakable silhouette of a Tholian warship loomed against the blood-red sky. "We need to move," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "Zara, get the ship hidden. The rest of you, grab what supplies you can carry. We're going dark." As they dispersed into the ruins, the ground shook with the impact of another bombardment. Ricky watched in horror as a brilliant beam of energy lanced down from the heavens, carving a swath of destruction through a nearby settlement. "This is madness," Kython whispered, his hybrid features twisted in anguish. "They're not just conquering anymore. This is deep genocide." Ricky placed a hand on Kython's shoulder. "Which is why we can't give up. Come on, we need to regroup with the other cells." Over the next weeks, New Terra became a battleground unlike any they had seen before. Ricky's team moved like ghosts through the shattered landscape, striking at Tholian patrols and supply convoys, before melting back into the shadows. Kython proved invaluable, his knowledge of Tholian tactics and communication protocols allowing the rebels to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. But the toll of betraying his own kind took a toll on him. "Another battalion moving into Sector 7, Kython reported, his eyes fixed on a stolen Tholian datapad. "They're spreading thin, trying to cover too much ground." Ricky nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. "Good. We'll hit them here and here," he said, pointing to locations on a makeshift map. "Small teams, quick strikes. We need to keep them off balance." As the rebels prepared for their next raid, a familiar voice crackled over their comms. "Hey, Resistance! Miss me?" Zara's cocky grin was almost audible as she continued. "I've got a present for you. Meet me at the old mining outpost in 2 hours, and bring some muscle. This package is heavy." When Ricky and his team arrived at the rendezvous point, they found Zara standing proudly next to a massive crate. "Courtesy of our friends in the Orion sector," she said, patting the container. "Enough firepower to make even a Tholian think twice." As they cracked open the crate, revealing an arsenal of advanced weaponry, a flicker of hope ignited in Ricky's chest. For the first time since the invasion began, they had a fighting chance. But their elation was short-lived. The night sky lit up with an otherworldly glow as a massive object entered New Terra's orbit. Its size defied comprehension, an artificial moonjam packed with weaponry. "By the stars," Kython breathed, his face pale. "It's the planet Cracker. Admiral Zorgax must be desperate to deploy it here." Ricky's fists clenched as he watched the monstrosity position itself above New Terra's capital. He knew what had to be done. "We're taking that thing down," he declared, his voice filled with steel. "Kython, I need everything you've got on its defenses. Zara, call in every favor you've got. We're going to need ships and lots of them." As the rebels prepared for their most daring mission yet, the planet Cracker loomed overhead, a silent promise of annihilation. The fate of New Terra, and perhaps all of humanity, would be decided in the coming battle. The planet Cracker's massive silhouette dominated the sky, its weaponry charging for a devastating strike. Ricky's team raced against time, their stolen Tholian shuttle weaving through a hail of defensive fire. "Approaching the main hangar," Kython called out, his fingers dancing across the alien controls. "Brace for impact." The shuttle crashed through the energy barrier, skidding across the hangar floor in a shower of sparks. As alarms blared, the rebels burst from the wreckage, weapons at the ready. "Move!" Ricky shouted, leading the charge towards the central core. They fought their way through twisting corridors, Tholian defenders falling before their advance. Zara's voice crackled over the comms, relaying critical intel from her vantage point in orbit. "Multiple battle groups converging on your position. Whatever you're planning, do it fast." The team reached a massive set of blast doors. Kython interfaced with the security panel, his hybrid physiology allowing him to bypass Tholian safeguards. "I can get us in," he said, voice strained, "but it's a one-way trip. The fail-safes—" Ricky clasped his shoulder. "Do it. We knew the risks. The doors hissed open, revealing the pulsing heart of the planet Cracker. Energy arced between towering pylons, feeding the weapon's insatiable hunger. As they raced to plant their explosives, a cold voice rang out. Predictable to the last. Admiral Zorgax emerged from the shadows, flanked by his elite guard. The Tholian's eyes gleamed with cruel intelligence. "Did you truly believe you could stop us?" Zorgax sneered. "Your pitiful rebellion ends here." Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as the two forces clashed. Ricky's team fought with desperate ferocity, but they were outgunned and outnumbered. One by one, the rebels fell. Ricky watched in horror as his comrades were cut down, their screams echoing in the cavernous chamber. Kython, gravely wounded, dragged himself towards the main control console. "Ricky," he called out, "the explosives, they're not enough. We have to overload the core." Ricky nodded grimly, understanding what had to be done. He provided covering fire as Kython input the final commands. Alarms blared as the core's containment began to fail. Zorgax roared in fury, charging towards them with inhuman speed. Ricky met the Tholian admiral head-on, their blades clashing in a shower of sparks. They fought with savage intensity, each knowing the fate of New Terra hung in the balance. Zorgax's superior strength began to tell. The admiral's blade sliced through Ricky's defenses, drawing blood, but in that moment of triumph, Zorgax left himself exposed. Ricky's blade found its mark, piercing the Tholian's armor. Zorgax staggered back, disbelief etched on his alien features. "Impossible," he gasped, dark ichor seeping from the wound. Ricky stood over his fallen foe, grim satisfaction warring with exhaustion. Nothing's impossible for humanity. The ship shuddered as the core reached critical mass. Ricky limped to Kython's side, helping his friend to his feet. "There's still time," Kython said weakly. "The escape pods—" Ricky shook his head. "No, we have to make sure this thing goes down. For New Terra, for everyone." As the planet Cracker began to tear itself apart, Ricky activated his comm link one last time. "Zara, it's done. Get clear and finish this." Zara's voice came back, thick with emotion. "Understood. We'll make it count, I promise." Ricky and Kython stood together, watching as fissures of energy spread across the chamber. The planet Cracker's hull breached, revealing the star-filled expanse of space. In those final moments, as fire and light consumed everything, Ricky felt a sense of peace. They had done it. New Terra would be free. The explosion lit up the night sky, visible even from the planet's surface. Cheers erupted from the battered rebel strongholds as the planet Cracker disintegrated. But victory had come at a terrible cost.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.